Hey everyone, welcome to another walkthrough video of Excel Wonders. We're going to look at a tool called Timeline Generator, and as the name suggests, this is a tool that allows you to generate horizontal or vertical timelines. So when you open the file, you should arrive right straight at the timeline page. And as you can see, this is the timeline. There's a few selectors here that I'll show you in a second, and there's a table below. Let's start with the table. So on the table, you can add new items like this. You can move them around using these arrows, or you can use a sorting functionality, for example, to sort by name or contacts. And here it is. And if you want to delete, you just select the one you want to delete, you confirm yes, and it's deleted. You can make changes in the content. So this table is fully editable, so you can make changes on the name. Let's put it like this. You can change the date. So to change the dates, you simply click on the date, and you make the changes you want. So for example, let's select November 14th. Oh, you can't because if you see, the current end date is October 17th. And when I try to select November, it tells me that the start date cannot be higher than the end date. So I need to select, for example, October 10th. And here it is. I can change the end date as well. So for example, let's change November 1st. And then I have the duration, which is a formula that is not editable. And then I have these three columns that are fully customizable. And I'll show you how. If you go here in settings, I wanted to show you these last settings here. So you can actually change if you want to show the duration or not. Currently it says yes, but if I click on no and I go back to timeline, it no longer shows the duration, just the start date and end date. But if I go back and select duration, now it shows me again. The other thing I can do is I can change how I want to name the item. So currently it's set as contact or contacts, and then I can define a different singular and plural form of how I want to call those items. And finally, these three editable fields, cost, urgency, and owner, you can change the labels of them, or you can select or deselect them. So for example, if I don't want to see any of them, I deselect them like this, and I go back to the table, and they're all gone. But if I want to put them again, and again, you can call them anything you want. You go to timeline, and it's back here. Now let's look at the timeline. So the timeline currently as is a horizontal timeline. But you can change that. You have four different types of timelines. You have horizontal simplified, vertical, and vertical simplified. What is the difference between horizontal and horizontal simplified? Well, if I click on horizontal simplified and I go back to the timeline, the only difference is that the simplified version shows all the items above the axis. That's it. The difference is that if I go back to settings and I put horizontal, you will see that the items are displayed both above and below the axis line. If I go in settings and I choose vertical, you'll see that the timeline will change to a vertical timeline like this. And again, if I click on settings and I go and I choose the vertical simplified, you will see that all the items are still displayed vertically, but after the axis, in this case, the y-axis. Now, let's go back to settings and let's select horizontal, because what I want to show you is the second part here. If timeline type is horizontal or horizontal simplified, do you want to display the duration as bars? So if you go back to timeline and if you look at this, the table, it always has a start date and an end date. Now, currently as is, it marks all the start dates as simple dots like this, but it doesn't show the evolution from start date to end date, which in different values has different numbers. So for example, in this one here is 24 days. If I go back to settings and I set this as yes, and I go back to the timeline, now you see these bars that show the duration of each item. And if I go back to settings, I can also change the timeline markers. So currently they're in blue, but I can change them to any of these colors. So for example, if I change them to red, I go back to timeline, and now they're all in red. Now, one piece of advice is you should always also specify these settings here, because these settings govern the beginning and the end of the chart. So currently it's set as October 4th, but for example, I could put, let's say, October 2nd. And if I click confirm, you will see that this part will change. And now it's October 2nd. I can do the same for these. I could change instead of December 13th, I could change to November 30. And if I click confirm, it's going to change. Now, it doesn't show because this is only showing every 10 days. But if, for example, I were to choose, let's say, November 21st, it would show back here. And I always recommend that as you make changes on the table, you should click Update Chart. Because as you make these changes, the chart will not automatically update. So anytime you want to consider the chart, click always Update Chart. The last thing I want to show you is export. So if you want to export this timeline and the table below to make more profound changes or to visualize in a different manner, you simply click Export. You should see this window popping up, which will allow you to choose a file name, format, and location. And then once you click Export, you will see that file there. So I'm going to close because I don't want to create an export. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this timeline generator.